Welcome to the Music Production Podcast, everybody. This is the show about all things making music. I'm your host, Brian Funk. I'm an Ableton certified trainer, music producer. And today I'm very excited to have a chance to sit down and talk with Graham Cochrane, who you may know his work because he runs the Recording Revolution, which is an excellent source for music producers or anyone getting into recording or wanting to even improve on their skills. Incredible YouTube channel with over 500,000 views. And he's also got a site called grahamcochrane.com where he talks about the business aspect of things, which is also very interesting and handy. And I've been following Graham's work for a number of years now, so this is a little treat for me too to get to talk to him. So let's welcome aboard. How's it going, Graham?
It's going good, Brian. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for taking time out of your schedule. You're a busy man, and we appreciate having you here.
Yeah, man. Glad to dive in.
So I first came across your work through the Recording Revolution, and one of the golden gems that I think I owe to you is this idea of mixing in mono. That's a tip I picked up from you and tried, and it's really helped me clean things up a lot. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I've talked about that before on the show too. But maybe I can ask you in your own words to kind of describe what you're doing and what your mission is.
Yeah, man. I'm a musician who got into recording like a lot of people and fell in love with that as an art form just as much as I love songwriting and performing, and went to audio school, thought I was going to be a rock star. And then if that didn't work out, the plan B was to work in a big studio. So when plan A didn't work out, plan B was on track, and I was interning at a $5 million studio, working with people there and fighting for the one paid position, the staff position, all of us interns. And it was a good experience, but I realized that was like a key moment for me, realize that like all these people in the studio are grumpy. Like they're all stressed out. Every time a session's happening, like it's just running around, like things don't work. You've got this beautiful SSL console and you're like cables aren't working. Why is this not patched in correctly? And I'm thinking, dude, if I just plug a mic into my inbox, it works and I can just make music. Right. I don't need to be slowed down. So I remember thinking, dude, even if I got this job, I don't know if this is like sucking the joy out of why I got into music. I have more fun at home in my apartment with my laptop and my rig and just creating. So that kind of was like a key point for me where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go freelance. So I went freelance recording and mixing, and I became passionate about proving to people, this was back in 2005 and 6, like proving to people back then that you could make professional sounding records in your apartment. Like, to me, I was like, I don't care where you make a record. It doesn't matter where. It's just the vibe and the state of mind you're in and how good your performance and song is. So that became like my ethos, and that evolved into starting to share content online. I'd actually lost a job during the recession. We'd moved to Florida, and I was just trying to ramp up freelance work. And I started blogging and started creating some videos, thinking that would help me get some more traction with client work, because I didn't know anybody in Florida when I moved here. And that like entry into the digital space of like teaching, just sharing what I was doing with client work, sharing what I was doing on my own projects, led to the beginning of what's the Recording Revolution, which is basically a music education company. I mean, I try to teach and train and empower home studio owners to make better sounding music, to make professional sounding music, and to break through a lot of what I think is old dying myths about you can't make great sounding records at home.
That's a great story. And you hit on a couple of things that I've gone through myself. The idea of like wanting to be the rock star. And I think it kind of hit me after going on a 2-week tour down to Florida and back with the band that we, shoestring together. Had a great time, but I was like, man, 2 weeks is enough of that. It's a rough lifestyle, and I like being home. I like just the things that you can't have if you're always on the road. Like I love having dogs, having a relationship. These are things that are really difficult to keep going if you're constantly on the road.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the home studio era that we're living in, this revolution that we're living in, allows people to realize their dream of music creation and connecting with fans and an audience while also having a normal life. Where you had to choose before, and now you actually get the opportunity to not choose your dream or your family, or choose your dream or making a living, or choose your dream or having a healthy lifestyle. You can
Right.
have a little bit of both. And that was unprecedented. It's unprecedented because we couldn't do that 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, we definitely live in a pretty cool time with just being able to reach people and sharing knowledge and learning things. Most of my learning about music production was done online and through just experience at home. I didn't go to music school. I didn't go to the big studios. I like your point about how everything was breaking in the studios, because as we get more and more complex, we have, and I've fallen for this a million times in my life where I thought that new piece of gear was going to be the thing, and now I'm going to make my hit. I'm finally empowered, only to realize either it didn't make any difference, or now my complicated setup is even harder to navigate and there's more points of failure to deal with.
Yeah, I think simplicity wins in creative environments.
Yeah, that's definitely a nice theme of your work, that you're letting people know that you don't need all of that stuff. Sure, it can be nice and it is exciting sometimes to get new gear into some of those classic pieces, but it's not a necessity. It's not the dividing factor.
Yeah, I think what I started to see, because I was coming up on the same internet forums on like Gear Sluts and all these other places that everybody else was, and seeing the way people talked about music production back then, and it's certainly even more the case now. I saw people talking about gear more than they talked about actually making music, and it made me wonder: are they even making music, or are they just talking about gear? Which is fine if you just want to buy stuff, but what it turned into was like this common theme of, my music doesn't sound good when I record it. It must be because I don't have expensive professional equipment, which is a hypothesis that's fine to like discover and like tease out to see if that's true. The punchline is that it's not true. Like that's not the reason why, but it's good. That's a good thing to discover for yourself. And that's what people would do. They'd buy a new microphone or a new preamp, or they would switch to Logic versus Pro Tools, or get new plugins, or put up acoustic treatment, or whatever it was. And then they would try it again and realize, man, my stuff still sounds like crap. And it's like what I realized then, and what I've been trying to teach people for over a decade, is like, look, when you try to swap out gear and your recordings don't get any better, or they're marginally better, it's got to tell you something, that it's not your gear that's the bottleneck. It's you. It's you that's the bottleneck. And that's a good thing to know, because A, it's cheaper to just work on yourself than to buy stuff. B, it's freeing when you realize, okay, I just am not good at this craft yet. That's like anything you try to learn. And so then you just focus on investing in yourself and practicing and trying new things and getting education. And like YouTube is incredible for that. And so there's so much opportunity to really get better. And I think it's freeing when you remove the gear as the stumbling block and just put it all in yourself. Because then you can make great records with cheap stuff, no stuff, expensive stuff, because it's really you that's the asset, not the gear.
Yeah, that's empowering, and it gives you something you can actually work on instead of just kind of staring through the window at the music store at all the gear you can't afford. So it's a great message to put out there. I'm glad there are people singing that song, because it can be a point of like resistance. People feel like they don't get into it, or they think they can never make it because they'll never have that stuff. It's without their reach. You are right now have just finished a course with another familiar face in the world of the YouTube music educator, Ill Factor, the EP course, that I think is very interesting. It might be something people that are listening are excited about, because we've been talking about finishing some music during the month of February and putting something out. And to, again, piggyback and add to your point about this amazing time we live in, we can distribute our music ourselves. We can get our songs out there to everybody on every streaming service. It's incredible. When I was learning guitar when I was a teenager, playing in bands, we were taking lessons from a guy who was also a producer at his own record label, and he's doing all these distribution deals, trying to get CDs in stores and radio play, and all of that stuff now is kind of like, you can bypass it all if you're savvy enough. So I guess I wanted to ask you about some of your thoughts on finishing music, getting it out there. That seems to be a big issue for a lot of people, myself included, that it's easy to get the idea going, but then how do you take it home? How do you finish it?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think creative people are plagued generally with starting lots of things, never finishing.
Hmm.
And it's for a variety of reasons. It's either like ADD, like we're like jumping onto the next shiny thing. It could be perfectionism, where like, gosh, I can't release this until it's perfect.
Right.
There are people that are still working on their single from 5 years ago because it's not perfect yet. Um, or it could be fear, just like it's done, but they're afraid to release it because they're afraid of what people will say, because that's the risk of creating art, is putting something out there in the world and then like holding your breath and seeing if people like it or not, and it is scary. So those are three key reasons why a lot of creatives don't finish things. And so I'm a big proponent of finishing things, because I think finishing projects and moving on to the next project is how we get better.
Hmm.
It's how we grow. So instead of perfecting the one project, I'd rather you make a 10 or 15 projects, and you'll be really good by the end of that process. And that last one will be phenomenal compared to the first one. I think back to when I was writing songs in high school and I wanted them to sound perfect, but now I look back at the songs, they were stupid songs. Like I would never want to spend years perfecting those songs. I thought they were so great then, but I've written so many better songs years later, right? So there's an element of, well, what do you do to hack yourself to finish? Because there's no boss telling you to finish for most of us. There's no label saying your album has to come out in 12 months. There's no pressure. So what we have to do is treat ourselves like a professional. All professionals have deadlines, whether you're a songwriter, whether you're a performer, whether you're a producer, you have deadlines. We all work under deadlines, whether you make films,
Hmm.
whether you write a book, everything has a deadline. And creatives, naturally, we like to push against deadlines. But I think people that hate deadlines don't see that deadlines are actually the secret weapon. Deadlines unlock creativity, because without a boundary, you just sort of like flounder.
Hmm.
With a boundary, you're like, okay, I got to do this within this amount of time with this certain amount of gear that I have. How can I do it? And that's where the human brain is so powerful. That's where we start to like create amazing things. And so I think having a deadline of when you're going to release the song, that's one reason why we created this course, the EP Blueprint, Il Factor and I. And he's a super talented electronic music producer out of Miami. And I just love the guy, and we're great friends, and we've written some songs together, and it's been fun. But we're like, dude, what if we worked together and documented our EP? Because we were writing one last fall, and we were going to release it just for fun. And we're like, dude, what if we just document this process and talk about how like we don't just hang out and like goof around and hope stuff comes out. We actually have to put something on a calendar and say, when can
Yeah.
we release this EP? And then when does it have to be mastered? Oh, and then when does it have to be mixed if you're going to master it those days? When does it have to be recorded? And you work backwards,
Hmm.
and you give yourself these windows of time where you're like, well, I guess we're going to do this thing. And that's when stuff starts to happen. So I think if creatives can trust the process, fight perfectionism and realize the way to get better is to finish, and fight the fear that it is scary to release something. And I think in the past I had a little bit of like naivety, like, dude, I think my stuff's awesome, so I would release it not knowing that it wasn't awesome. And that kind of helped me release stuff, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware. But you have to be okay with some people thinking it's not that great, and just release it, because it's how you're going to get better. Every artist looks back and says, yeah, those early movies, those early books, those early songs, even journalists, those early articles I wrote, not the best. I'm a YouTuber, right? Just go to Recording Revolution's YouTube channel, click on videos, sort by oldest to newest, and watch my first ever videos from like 2010 and laugh at me, right? They're so bad. They're so bad for so many reasons. Camera quality, bad lighting. I look like I'm like half asleep. I'm slow. I'm awkward on camera. But if I weren't putting out those first videos 10 years ago, 11 years ago, whenever it was, I wouldn't be able to make the videos I make now that impact millions of people. So you got to start to get better, to get your creative juices flowing, and treat yourself like a professional. That's where the deadlines come in.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I like the idea of working backwards. I teach high school English, so my angle with this deadline thing is always with my students that they will just wait until the last minute to do it, no matter what. It doesn't matter how much time, or they'll worry about it and they'll let it swell and swell until that deadline. But it's like, and I was the same way in school, where suddenly I got like a superpower the night before the project's due, and you cut out all the nonsense and you get down to business and you figure out what to do. It's a super powerful method to follow, but it's a hard discipline, I guess, to put on yourself.
It is. It's not natural for most
Mm.
people. I might be a little weird because I think it came naturally to me. But it's something that can be learned. And in a way, like we're able to do this in other areas of our life, especially if there's employment involved, right?
Mhm.
If your boss
Yeah.
tells you something by a certain date, you get it done, right? It's just like you described with your students. Where we care about the end result, where there's fear of failure or fear of losing employment, we'll get something done. And that's where I want us to treat ourselves in the home studio as professionals. Like, it's fun. It can be a hobby. I'm not saying it has to be monetized or you have to suck the life out of it. But just because it's fun doesn't mean you shouldn't treat yourself like a professional. Literally have a calendar and block off like the times that you're even able to get into the studio. If you have kids like I have, and if you have a job, and if you have school, and you can only work certain nights of the week or only on Saturdays or whatever, circle those blocks of time in your calendar, talk about it with your spouse or with your kid and say, hey, is this a fair amount of time for me to be in the studio? And if they agree, yes, like, cool, I'm going to put this on the calendar. These are my studio hours, and book studio time for free with yourself, and then treat yourself like a professional, because it really does matter. Like, why would we treat our work like it matters, but not our own passion with music like it matters? They both matter. One may not pay the bills, but that doesn't reduce its value anymore, right? So it's we're able to do it is all I'm saying. We just need to choose to do it in these areas that we really, really care about.
Yeah, I think it gives a certain respect to what you're doing. It makes it this thing that you value, and I've found by putting on the calendar the amount of time I have, like budgeting my time for music, I realize how little of it I actually do have, and
Mm.
that really affects the way I work. It changes my mind about spending an hour and a half EQing a kick drum before I've even written a song. All
Yep.
these little things we can get caught up in trying out all these different compressors or gear or whatever you have. When you realize the limited amount of time, it also gives you a nice focus on what is important and what you actually have the time to focus on.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's so you guys put this together. Let me ask you, what do you think is the hardest part of this process of putting songs together, releasing it, anywhere along that timeline?
It really depends on the person. I mean, some
Yeah.
people get caught up in like finishing the songs, like
Hmm.
song ideas, like we call them song skeletons. Like, you're just writing and creating, and you get in the general arrangement. That's fun. Uh, then when it comes time to like doing all the final production elements and automation and mixing, it's like you kind of lose the fun. And you're like,
Yeah.
I want it to sound great, but I'm kind of over it. A lot of people get stuck there. A lot of our students that took the course, from what we've found so far, um, they have more questions about getting traction on Spotify or streaming platforms, getting people to know they exist, which is one reason why we created the course, because it's a key element there. And the whole idea is to like help you create your EP and then get your first 1,000 streams. And so that's where a lot of people are getting stuck, and they're like, oh, do I have to copyright my music? Can I do covers? Like, how do I get on certain people's playlists? And so they're so overwhelmed by the how to do that or how is it going to work out, that they either don't release, or they're waiting till they have it all figured out perfectly, or they want to launch perfectly and get momentum, and they can get stuck there. So it really probably just depends on their level of experience, and where their biggest fear is. And everyone's different. So I've seen it all across the board.
Do you have a personal spot for yourself? You find yourself getting caught?
Um, for me, what I like is the creation and completion of the songs. The promotion of the songs, it's not my favorite thing, which is funny because I do marketing in a way for a living. To me, the music is just for me. Like, I want to share it with people because I'm really proud of it. I want them to hear it, but it really is the satisfaction that I'll listen back to the EP and just like put on headphones and just listen to it and be like, dude, it's done.
Yeah.
Listen to what we did. and it's just for me. And that's really important for me because there were so many years ago where I was writing songs for other people, meaning in my heart it was like just to like be liked by people or to get traction as a career. And that was a good experience, but I think I'm sort of reacting to that where now, um, since I don't have to make a living off of my music that I write, I've removed all that pressure for myself and I just enjoy it. Like that's why I collaborated with Ill Factor, because he has such a different musical style than me. We did one song together 3 years ago, and it was awesome. It was a lot of fun, and like it was some of the most fulfilling creative work I'd done in a while. And so that's one reason why I wanted to do this EP, was just to satisfy that itch, and it's just pure unadulterated like creation for me.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that process a lot too. The creating part is fun, especially the very early stages. I think it's so exciting because anything can happen, and you never know what it's going to be. But that pressure is real, and you're definitely right. The idea of releasing and what's it going to be? Is it going to be successful, whatever that might mean for you? I think I'm a little lucky, maybe like you as well, that I enjoy just putting it on in my car in the morning so much that that is almost enough to pull me through. Well, maybe that's also a bad thing. But
No, I don't think it's ever a bad thing. I think that's got to be the primary reason first. There could be other reasons too, like you want to make a career
mm,
or you want to share it. But that if that reason isn't there to just be able to put it on in your car and go, "Wow, look what I made," then man, there might be something missing. You know?
yeah, I guess that's a more personal motivation. Whereas, and that's something you can control, I guess. You can make music you like, but it's very difficult to figure out what other people are going to like. And you won't get to know that until after you're done anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Feedback comes a little late. I think something that's really cool that you've done is that you've taken your passion for music and your passion for teaching and built this career around it that is, it's a very 21st century type of career where, we weren't seeing this type of thing too much like in the 90s, for instance. People thought making it in music was MTV or something like that. But you found another way to do that. And you've even taken, it's almost like a meta version of what you're doing. You've taken this idea with the recording revolution and all the work, and now you're even giving business advice. And I was kind of interested to ask you how you got to that point, because I just think it's like, for me, I see like you've done this thing about, you're talking about making music and showing people and helping people along the way. And now it's, I guess meta is the word I'm looking for, but this idea that like now it's a thing about a thing about a thing.
It's like the movie Inception. Yeah.
Inception, a dream about a dream. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the teaching the business thing was much like the recording revolution. It wasn't something I set out to do. It was a natural overflow of what was happening in my real life. So if the recording revolution was a natural overflow of what I was already doing, like the part I skipped of the story when I said I started blogging, I was always the audio guy in my circle of music friends, right?
Yeah.
I was the guy that knew how to record, how to set up, went to audio school. So I was recording all the records for my friends' bands, the bands at church and local other churches, and all the groups and singing groups in my college. Like, so I was known as the audio guy. And so when other musicians who I knew were talented, who would be interested in maybe having their own home studio, just to even demo some stuff, they would come to me with questions. What should I buy? What do I actually need? How do I use it? So I was always teaching my friends how to record music and think about gear. So that naturally overflowed into creating content online. And to this day, when I shoot a video, I imagine like I'm speaking directly to one of my friends, and I have them in my mind when I teach it. The same thing happened with the business stuff. Around 2015, I was starting to get more press for the success I was having in the recording revolution. So people who don't know anything about music were interested in the business I'd built. Like, oh, how's this guy making this kind of money doing YouTube videos on music recording? It's so random. And so that led to some people reaching out to me and getting in touch with people and doing sort of informal coaching and just answering questions. And a lot of people wanted to know, what are the mechanics of this business model? I didn't realize it was a business. I thought you just make YouTube videos. It's just ad revenue. And I'm like, no, it's way more than ad revenue. And so I started to coach and help and teach people online business. Some of them are fitness people. Some of them are motorcycle mechanics. Some of them help people with back pain. Like there's all kinds of different people that I've been helping monetize their knowledge and expertise online. And so I felt by 2016, 2017, I was like, man, I don't know if I have time for this, but I really would enjoy creating a resource where I'm starting to download all this kind of stuff from my brain onto the internet about everything I've done for the last 10 years, creating the recording revolution, like how to build an audience, how to create content that sticks, how to monetize that content, how to build a business that's sustainable, how to not work all the time, but create sort of recurring revenue and passive income. All that stuff is interesting to me, just as interesting as EQ and compression and gear and kick drums and fun sounds. So I started a site called Graham Cochrane because I couldn't come up with a better name, and just started teaching on YouTube and sharing videos. And now it's a podcast as well, teaching online business. And I've been doing that for the last 2 years and building a business there on online business. And it's been a lot of fun because it's my other love. It's just like music has been my love my whole life in terms of hobbies and passions. And now online business and content and education and marketing is my other passion. So I get to basically share both.
I think it's cool how you're able to see these like points where your skills are kind of like you said, your friends were talking to you about your music production. And I just made the connection now. You start all your videos, hello friend, this is Graham. And I think that's a cool way to approach it. It does have this like personable thing. And then you also recognized what was happening with other people about business. And that's something I think maybe we don't always give value to out there, in the world. Like, because, there's these like traditional paths we're supposed to follow. And now things are changing so much. To have that like presence of mind to realize there's some sort of like desire, there's some sort of, want for this is a really, I think, a nice way for people to look at really anything they do. What are some of the strengths they have? What are people coming to you for? What do they seek you out for advice? What is their demand of you? And
well, yeah, you just said it. I mean, I didn't have a genius plan. I'm not really that clever. And I didn't really know this was a way to make a living, like a career for the 21st century. Like you said, I was really stressed out when I was starting the recording revolution because I had no money and I was trying to get gigs. Like what I knew, the traditional route of freelance recording and mixing made sense to me. That's what I was trained to do. That's what I was trying to build because I knew that I'm not that innovative. I was creating content in my spare time thinking it might help somehow. What ended up happening was I started to see the obvious momentum of there were people somehow finding this stuff that really connected with it. And I'm not, again, that smart, but it's obvious when someone, like you said, is coming to you and saying, man, you're really good at this, or you really helped me with this. Or when you explained that, the light bulb finally went off. And I just started to see that, man, there's something here. My wife saw it too, but I was like, I don't know how to make money off of this. So I can't keep helping these people for free forever. So whether or not there's something here I can't monetize, that's a separate story. And so I fumbled through trying to find ways, is it possible to make some amount of money off of this? Because I could see the demand. And that's what's interesting about the 21st century is we now have an opportunity to connect with people all over the world. And we have an opportunity, and just like music, right? You have so many sub niches and genres of music. So you can have weird, crazy, metal played by people with long hair that are 4 feet tall. Like that could be like your thing, right? Like you can have your crazy, weird sub genre, and there's plenty of people all over the world that like it because you're not limited to your local area. And the same is true with what what you're good at, what you're passionate about. And so you can find these people and they can find you, and you can become a resource to either teach, encourage, motivate, inspire, or entertain them. Any one of those can work in terms of building an audience. And then it's no different than being a rock star back in the day, which is you had a way to add value to an audience and you built an audience and then you monetize that audience through touring, through merchandise, through sales of music, whatever it is. It's the same thing, but the people who could build an audience, AKA who could add value to people, made a living. And all we're doing now is doing that through YouTube videos, podcasts, blogging, Instagram followers, whatever it is, it's the same thing. It's just morphed. And now there's more ways than ever, fewer gatekeepers, like you said, to be able to connect with people and ultimately come back to what drives humanity, which is serving people, right? So if I don't have anything of value that serves my audience, why would they listen to me? They wouldn't, and they certainly wouldn't buy anything from me. So it's democratized. So only the good people are really going to rise to the top, in the sense that like anybody can play the game. But if you're really serving people and getting them results, or helping them enjoy their lives more to some way, shape, or form, you're going to rise to the top and have more opportunity. The tools are built that way. They're built for engagement. They're built for relevancy. It's just set up that way. So you have just as much opportunity as anybody else. And the world is huge, and the online community is expanding every day. It's a strange, weird place where you don't have to have it figured out perfectly, but you do have to start thinking about things differently if you want to make an income online, either as a musician or an artist, or as a content creator. And I view them as one and the same, honestly.
Yeah, and I think one thing that really gets rewarded in this world is consistency, sincerity, and just not being afraid to start. Like you said, I feel the same way about a lot of my work. My first podcast was I put up a mic, just started talking, and it was just the most simple thing, but it got the momentum going. And then you kind of correct course as you go. And I think that's something we need to not be so afraid of. And nothing's perfect when it first starts. And your work is really amazing now. And when we go on your site, it's really polished and nice. But that's over the course of a good decade of hard work and consistency and showing up all the time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the magic word, consistency.
So before we part ways, where would you like us to send people? What would you think is a good place for them to start with some of your work if they haven't seen it already?
Yeah, definitely. If the music production stuff, you can just go to recordingrevolution.com or look it up on YouTube, Recording Revolution. I've got a ton of videos there and some free guides to get you started, one of which is my 6 steps to a radio ready song guide. What I love about this is it's absolutely free. What I love about it is kind of reverse engineers like every major song you've ever heard on the radio in terms of like the production process. And what I have found is that most home studio owners, most of my students, are only doing 3 to 4 of these steps, and there's 6 total. So it kind of sort of shows the path of like, make sure you do all 6 of these to ensure your song sounds as good as it possibly can. And it's just a helpful resource. It's a little PDF they can download, but that's right there on the homepage. And then if you're into the business stuff, or if you start to view your brand as a brand, your music as a brand, and you as a business, which you really are, even if it's music you want to do, as opposed to quote unquote starting a business, you should check out my business content, because it's really about creating a presence online and being known for something and building an audience and serving that audience. And so I've got a free workshop at grahamcochrane.com that walks you through my entire business model. So you can sort of see exactly what I do with the Recording Revolution, exactly what I'm doing with Graham Cochrane, how it works, and it'll probably give you a ton of ideas on how to maybe think about what you're doing a little more strategically.
Yeah, I definitely think it does. From my experience, I think some of the ways you talk about building a business, it all connects really, and into music and life, even if you have other side hustles that you're into. I think it's very useful for anyone, even if you don't think of yourself as like a entrepreneur per se. But listen, I want to be respectful of your time and let you get on your way. I know you're a busy man, and I want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk. It's been really nice to hear your side of things for a little bit behind the scenes. And as I said, I'm a big fan of your work, and I'm always watching your videos when they come out. So I thank you for all of that in the past, and your continued hard work is very much appreciated over here on Long Island by me.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate the time, man.
All right. So check out recordingrevolution.com, everybody, and have yourselves a good day. Take care.